Hello everyone, my name is Rich from Deep Groove Mono, and this is Record Collector Confessions. This is episode 10, so congratulations, we made it to 10 episodes. Here's to many more. I didn't buy anything this week, so that was good. I've been keeping myself occupied with a new project, which is to re-digitize my CD library. I decided I want to just have lossless digital files to put onto my new Sony Walkman when I get it. I picked out a Sony Walkman. I'm kind of tired of Apple Music, so I'm switching over to a software called Swincian that was recommended to me by a good audiophile friend of mine. And so far, Swincian's great and much simpler, less buggy interface than Apple Music. Much better for digital music collectors like myself. So I've been basically re-importing all of my CDs. I'm just doing jazz for now. I'm leaving all the other genres for a later time. In the process, I'm also very particular about album art, and I've been doing a lot of work to make sure that the album art looks good on the screen. I've always been pretty passionate about making sure I got nice, clean album art for my digital files. That's been a bulk of the work. I've been scanning in the CD booklets, and in the past I've already, for all these albums, I've already looked for high resolution digital artwork, and so I compare the two and I try to figure out which one I prefer, and I kind of go with that. So I've been doing a lot of that importing and doing a lot of scanning and touching up, and I like to use Apple's Preview app and Photoshop to touch things up. I'm using an Epson scanner now, nothing fancy. And when it comes to collecting like CDs and vinyl, I like the album art to look good. As is the case with most original pressings, the album art of the original first pressing always looks awesome. Back in those days, graphic designers, manufacturers, labels, they took album art seriously. They always made sure it looked really good, and that's not the case with reissues. Something that I noticed a lot is you get a really high contrast between the darkest colors and the brightest colors. And my theory for that is that often reissue labels are using album artwork from another copy or something, whether it's an original pressing or another reissue or something. And what happens is like you get glare from light when you just take a photo or something, or the darker spots end up having like dust and markings on them. And if you bump up the contrast, you can kind of hide all that. But what happens is that the shadows kind of close in on the lighted areas, and it just doesn't look as good. So I try to be careful not to turn up the contrast too much for the sake of trying to make it look like you can't see those marks or that glare or whatever it is from light. So I found that a lot of reissue labels, they don't really get album art quite right. And the ones that do, I'm really happy to get those. Some reissue labels for jazz that get album art right. Original Jazz Classics does sometimes, not all the time. Some of my favorite reissues are the early 80s Japanese Toshiba reissues. They did a lot of those jackets with dimpled gloss like the original pressings, and sometimes the contrast is bumped up on those, sometimes it's better. The album art for the Toshibas, those early 80s Toshibas, is definitely better than the Kings. The Kings are guilty of that high contrast thing quite a bit, actually. Classic Records did a great job with album art, honored the original pressing down to the tiniest of details, including the logo. Most people know that Music Matters redid the album art for their issues, where they took the original negatives from Francis Wolf's photos and kind of reimpose them in the photos with the typography to make it look a little sharper and clearer. I kind of prefer it to look a little bit more like the original pressing, but I get what their intention was to, make everything as lifelike and realistic as possible. The Blue Note 75th anniversary and Blue Note 80th anniversary reissues I've seen, they really do a great job with the album art. The cardboard that they print the jackets on is kind of, it's not the highest quality. It's not at the level of Music Matters or Tone Poet, but I will tell you, the printing of the 75th anniversary and 80th anniversary Blue Note jackets is really good. I actually haven't seen one yet that I thought was bad. Another reissue label program, Analog Productions, their Blue Note double 45 RPM jackets I found are not very good. They didn't really get it right in a lot of instances. I think in some instances, one of my pet peeves is when they replace the typography and they use something that they think is kind of like the original typography, but it's not, and it's very easy to see for someone like me who's a jazz fanatic. And but when they did their 33 RPM Prestige mono reissue series, I thought that album art was beautiful, the ones of those that I saw. Yeah, I guess the only other topic on album art that I was thinking about talking about was the idea of how much album art plays into the experience of collecting and how coveted an album is, right? I'd love to do an experiment, like a research project sometime that takes an album like Cool Struttin' by Sonny Clark, right? Classic album art. And show it to people who are new to jazz who might not know what it is, and put a different cover on it, like a cover that's ugly or something, and then give it the original album art and make sure you show it to the person before they listen to it and see if there's any consistency in terms of people rating the music higher or lower. I think you would find that people rate the music higher when they see the classic album art versus some other crappy album art. In other words, I think that, I know it's true for myself, and my theory is that it's true for other collectors, is that we value records that have quote-unquote better album art. We value them higher. And one of my close collecting friends, we talk about this kind of stuff, the kind of philosophy of collecting a lot. He was the first person to be when I said, one of our conversations, I said to him something like, album art, drives up the price of records a lot. And, he was very matter-of-factly oh, absolutely, and he admitted, he was the first person I ever knew to really admit, that plays a major factor in how much I want a record, basically. I realized, yeah, that's true for me too. I remember when I was first getting into jazz, I would browse the CD section of the library or the record store or whatever. The truth is that the stuff that caught my eye was that I wasn't familiar with was the stuff with cool album art. And I remember when I first started getting into Blue Note, the first thing I got was the Blue Note album art book. And that was really my introduction to Blue Note, just being really into all the album art. I think I had the Blue Note album art book before I had a Blue Note record, actually. This was before Spotify or anything. But when Spotify came around, I found a website online that had all the album art for all the Blue Note records, and I went through and I, made a list. I was like, oh, this one's cool, this one's cool, this one's cool. Let me hear what that sounds like, album art at the end of the day doesn't necessarily dictate that I'm going to like an album, of course. There's a lot of examples of albums where I absolutely love the album art and I definitely do not like the music. But yeah, I think that there's something going on psychologically when we see album art that we love and we hold it in our mind when we're listening to the music. It definitely, I think, influences us. It makes us open up more to all the possibilities with the music and our ability to kind of understand or feel like we understand it or appreciate it. And I don't see anything wrong with that, it kind of flies in the face of this idea that collectors and audiophiles talk about, that the music has to be the most important thing. And it's almost like people say that so much, it starts to make people guilty and feel bad if anything other than music weighs into their decision-making process for what they like or what they want to collect or what they do collect. You know, and of course that shouldn't be the way it is. Yeah, so my confession for this week is that, you know, I've definitely passed up a lot of records just because I didn't like the album art. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of classic jazz albums to choose from, so why not just start with the ones that kind of look cool and have cool album art, you know? Obviously, over the years, you'll get introduced to stuff that is great despite the album art, and there's classic albums that have crappy album art that, you know, we end up liking despite that. It's true, and, you know, I think that in the past, I have been in a lot of situations where I bought an album and I thought I kind of liked the music, or I wanted to give the music a chance, and then, you know, I mainly liked the album art. And after a while, maybe I decided I didn't really like the music that much, and I would sell the record or the CD. And at this point in my collecting, I'm actually, for the first time, I'm happy to say that I am content with just owning a record, even if I don't really love the music, and I just like the album art. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think I let that whole idea that the music has to be the most important thing sink a little too much into my head and get to me a little too much, and I think it made me feel a little guilty about keeping an album around if I didn't love the music. You know, as long as the album art looks good on the front of the jacket, I don't really care too much at this point that the materials aren't the highest quality, like, you know, the big catchphrase, the big buzzword in collecting now is tip-on jackets, which kind of annoys me when I hear it for some reason, but that's what they're called, I guess. And yeah, I don't need tip-on jackets. I don't care about that, especially if it makes the record cheaper. But yeah, so as long as the printing is good on the front, the colors are nice, it's nice high resolution, it doesn't look pixelated or anything like that, you know, that's a good choice for me. I am excited to add a new section to my blog. I'm gonna start to share my favorite jazz album art with my readers in a new section on my website, so keep an eye out for that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.